On to the NDP, New Democratic Party, with their leader, Jagmeet Singh. So Jagmeet, so Singh, so all the time. This is Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the party, and his superpower is, hey, look, a brown guy. Side note, brown people power is not valid in Quebec. Now, the reason I saw his superpower is because Justin Trudeau's rhetoric is essentially, life is unfair, racism is in the ether, socialist nonsense. The only thing that would make me better as an evil white man is if I was a brown person or a person of color. Socialist nonsense. Whereas Jagmeet Singh is able to get up there and say, life's unfair, racism is everywhere, socialist nonsense, but hey, look, I am a brown guy. And, of course, the radical lefties who might say, what's a Jagmeet Singh, not paying attention, and like, oh, look, I can vote for him because he's a different color and I can feel not racist. So that is his superpower, is, hey, look, a brown guy, not valid in Quebec. And we'll go over Quebec in a second. Now, who is his campaign manager? Who wants Jagmeet Singh to get elected? Is there anyone really going for Jagmeet Singh? I guess his mom. We'll say this is Jagmeet Singh's mom. She is his #1 fan, I assume. I assume Jagmeet Singh's mom is going to vote for him. Is anyone else? Who knows? Okay. Jagmeet Singh's party policy. We can run through this all pretty quickly. There's a lot here. Price controls on everything. That will wreck the economy. Pharmacare, rent control, free university, free daycare. Increase EI. Make EI easier to get. We'll get to that in a second. Control the price of cell phones. Control the price of gas. Lower gas prices by increasing gas prices than lowering gas prices. Increase access to EI. Trust me, I used to do stand-up comedy, so I know a bunch of artists and comedians, and from talking to them, it's very, 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 very easy to get on EI in this country. It is not hard at all. So it needs to get even easier. I don't know how that could possibly be, but maybe we'll just hand everyone free money, and if you're not on EI, we'll just assume you'll give it back to the government. That's the only way we can make it easier here. Also, a policy of making jobs out of nowhere because green energy. So jobs are just going to spring up because Jagmeet says so. Tax the ultra-rich way more. And as we said, Justin Trudeau tried this. He increased taxes on the wealthy. Tax revenue went down. Jagmeet Singh will do this even more. Tax revenue will go down even more because capital flight and the flow curve and everything we talked about previously. Now, good policy here by Jagmeet Singh, and we talked about how the Liberals destroyed small businesses. Jagmeet Singh's and the NDP's policy on small businesses is actually not that bad. They actually say they will lower taxes on small businesses, make it easier for small businesses to transfer ownership from father to son by taking away some of the transfer taxes. That is good. Now, they'll completely destroy the economy before they get there, but again, they do actually understand how mad small business owners are at the Liberal government for how badly they've been screwed over. So maybe they probably won't go back to the Stephen Harper years when it was strong, but they'll probably move from 78% to like 60%, which is still terrible, but technically better. So, see, I'm not totally biased. Woohoo. They will end free trade, install protectionist measures. They basically the worst of Trump and Bernie Sanders on trade, on crack. Jagmeet Singh is very, very against free trade. He is in for fair trade. No one knows what that means. Remember, Jagmeet Singh is the man of the debates who said free trade is bad, but then said Brexit is bad because it hurts free trade within the European Union. So what is Jagmeet Singh talking about? Environmental nonsense is a big part of here. We're going to be carbon-free by 2030, the UN mandate date. Yes, we're just going to, whatever the UN says, we're going to do it, right? We're going to be running on unicorn farts by the year 2030. Whoop-de-doo. Thank you, Jagmeet. Basically, on Indigenous affairs, he's borrowing Justin Trudeau's 2015 rhetoric, really not much chance. He's basically the structural problems within the reserve system, where the natives are kept down by oppressive government policies, ridiculous government policies, and convoluted socialism. He's going to increase the socialism, increase the convoluted policies, and increase the government pressure on them. And by increasing all the things that makes their lives miserable, he will somehow save them. Proportional representation. This is what Trudeau did not do before. Proportional representation is a horrendous idea. It is so stupid. Now, our election system is not perfect. But do you want a good example of proportional representation? Yesterday, Israel just had the second iteration of its election because the first one was stalled due to proportional representation. This one will also be stalled due to proportional representation, and they'll have to have a third election to try and get the results there. Which means for the next 2 years or so, they could keep having elections to try and get a new government because proportional representation has messed up the entire system. The only people who really benefit, there's the far right, the far crazy Arab Party coalition. Then you have the ultra-Orthodox parties. They gain power. So proportional representation is a recipe for sort of more extremist parties to come in. If you have a proportional representation, you'll always have crazy socialist parties. It would be good for the PPC because you could get more far right parties. You would get an Islam party right away. They could get power. You would get an anti-Islam party. It would be a complete mess. It would be nonsense. They're going to fight hate. How are they going to fight hate? By policing social media, of course, because they're lefties. Now, probably my favorite policy here is they're going to give Quebec complete veto power over national infrastructure projects. So if you want to build a pipeline between Alberta and Saskatchewan, and one of the company has a headquarters in Quebec, Quebec can veto this entire thing. Why not? Why not just make? Why not have? Why not say? You know what? How about we abolish all provincial legislatures outside of Quebec, and we just mandate that everyone in the federal government has to do exactly what everyone in Quebec says. How about that? Brilliant. Brilliant. Now, the reason he's doing this is because the NDP have a lot of seats in Quebec. I believe they have 21 seats in Quebec. Their major seat of power is in Quebec. Because Quebec likes socialist nonsense vis-a-vis equalization. And, Quebec likes to think of itself as a social rights, social justice activist. Listen, if Quebec had a motto, it would be, we believe that everyone deserves equal rights and equal treatment as long as they are white and speak French. That is sort of the Quebec's mantra. Now, Quebec is currently going through Bill 21. Quebec doesn't like religious symbols, and Jagmeet Singh has a turban on his head. I have no problem with Jagmeet Singh wearing a turban. Turban up. You know what? Throw on, hijab your face, kippas, your hijabs under a turban. I don't care. Put on tefillin on your turban. Who cares? I don't care. Quebec cares, though. He realizes that he is really going to have to pander hard to the hardcore, you're going to see pro-separatists, giving Quebec crazy powers. And all of he's doing this because he is desperate, because this election could be decided in Quebec. Because they might just decide to go liberal. They might go bloc, which will give the bloc a balance of power here. They're quite fed up with immigration, so they might finally go conservative because they want to close the border because, again, Quebec, not real happy with all these fake refugees just running into their province. Again, that's that. So now, what we really have to address with Jagmeet Singh is my favorite storyline coming into this election is going to be how heroic Jagmeet Singh is to run as an Indian Canadian. He might be the first Indian Canadian Prime Minister of Canada. He would also be the first Prime Minister of Canada banned from India. So here's an article from the CBC a couple years ago on how Jagmeet Singh needs to get his story straight on the Air India bombing. So when asked about Tawar Singh Pamar, he's the architect of the Air India bombing, which is the worst terrorist attack in Canadian history. So this is like the Osama bin Laden of Canada. When he was asked 3 times about people who put up pictures, there are some Khalistani temples in Canada that you can go to, and they have a picture of this guy up there glorifying him as they see him as a hero. He's basically Canada's Osama bin Laden. Jagmeet Singh was unable to condemn people putting up posters of him, and when asked about him, he said, "We don't know who is responsible, but we want everyone to come to justice. I've disowned terrorism everywhere, blah, 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 blah. But I will show you the real reason he's not allowed into India, and that is because he's a Khalistani." So here's a clip of him speaking at a Khalistani rally in San Francisco in 2015. So he's going to say some things in English about calling India committing genocide and different things. We'll sort of give that more context after to see why India is so upset. And then there's a clip of him also talking in Punjabi, basically stating that he is a Khalistani. So
I want to talk to you today. We all know what happened in 1984. We all know that this was a genocide. If we look at it, Sikhs were targeted for wearing the star and a gatra. Because if you look at Hindustan right now, Hindustan is built, India is built on inequality. ਸਾਡਾ ਹੱਕ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ 'ਚ ਰਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਜੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ 'ਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਧੱਕਾਸ਼ਾਹੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਜੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਮਾਰਨ ਨੂੰ ਫਿਰਦੀ ਹੈ ਜੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਿਵਾਸੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਹਮਲਾ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਆ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਖਤਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸੋਚਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਰਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹ ਕੋਈ ਆਪਸ਼ਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਉੱਥੋਂ ਉੱਠ ਕੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੋਰ ਦੇਸ਼ ਚਲੇ ਜਾਵਾਂਗੇ, ਉਸ ਦੇਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੇ ਤੇ ਧੱਕਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਦੇਸ਼ ਚਲਾ ਜਾਵਾਂਗੇ। ਤਾਂ ਜੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਔਖਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਜੂਣਾ। ਸੋ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸੋਚਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਕਿ ਆਪਣਾ ਘਰ ਜੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਘਰ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਨਾ ਬਣਾਈਏ। ਇਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੱਕ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ 'ਚ ਕੋਈ ਡਰ ਵਾਲੀ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਅਸੀਂ ਖੋਲ ਕੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਸਾਡਾ ਕਾਨੂੰਨੀ ਹੱਕ ਆ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਤੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਡਰਨਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ।
All right, I'm going to try and give this the best quick explanation I can of what's actually going on here and what the Khalistani movement is. So around 1982, the Punjab region straddles, it's in both Pakistan and India. Pakistan and India don't like each other. So the Pakistani ISI in 1982 created the Khalistani movement. And the Khalistanis are an extremist Sikh separatist faction wanting to violently separate from India. They're not supported by the majority of Sikhs, and they were started by Sikhs in Pakistan who were given weapons and ammunition and training by the Pakistani ISI. Then they were sent into India to create a Khalistani movement. And around 1984, so the genocide they talk about in 1984, here's what happened. Now, this is Operation Blue Star, if you Google it. So the head of the Khalistani terrorist operation, he basically held up in the holiest temple, holiest spot in the Sikh religion. So it's like if Osama bin Laden had been held up inside the Kaaba, the big black rock, if he had been in there for years. And then for years the Indian government were trying to get him out, peacefully, talks, different, whatever. Then they called to try to get him out. And then there was a massacre committed by the Khalistanis where hundreds of people were killed. I believe 39 of them themselves were Sikh. Now, so the military had to do something about this terrorist movement that was growing in strength and hold up in the temple. So they tried to get him out, and then Indira Gandhi sanctioned Operation Blue Star. And a lot of the officers and military people in there were actually Sikhs themselves. And here's the one thing that they will not talk about, and Jagmeet Singh will never tell you, and the Khalistanis will never tell you, is a lot of the fighting done in 1984, it was the Khalistanis who were not, so yes, it's extremist separatist Sikhs, but they were mainly fighting, a good half of what they were fighting were Sikhs who were Indian nationalists who wanted to be part of India. And again, India doesn't really discriminate against Sikhs. Sikhs have been prime minister in India. Sikhs were in the army. Sikhs were part of Operation Blue Star. Sikhs were killed by the Khalistanis. All right, Khalistanis killed. So then they went in. So this is basically like doing a raid on Mecca. They killed them because they were using human shields as hostages. People were killed in the crossfire, and because this is holy ground, it enraged a lot of people. Indira Gandhi, his prime minister, two of his Sikh guards killed him. This started riots within the people. So there were massacres on all sides. So these were essentially riots in Delhi. Sikhs, Hindus against Sikhs, Sikhs against Hindus, Sikhs against Sikhs, Sikhs against Sikhs who are non-Khalistani, and in total, so they call this a genocide. It's not a genocide. You know, maybe a few thousand people died, but this is counting both sides. So the violence here was, yes, bad, condemned all around. I'm not supporting any of it, but it was bad on all sides. And then in 1985, the worst terrorist attack in Canadian history happened, where Khalistanis bombed the Air India flight, where 320 people were killed, 323 I believe, and 280 of them were Canadian citizens. And Jagmeet Singh could not find it in his heart to condemn them. And in 2002, as a justice critic, he called on Canada to use our trade relations with India for leniency for the terrorist Balat Singh Rajana, who was involved in the plotting and the assassination of the Chief Minister of Punjab. So he doesn't repent. He's very in favor of this terrorist. This is a terrorist who admits he's a terrorist for terrorist reasons. Jagmeet Singh went full Ilhan Omar, trying to get him leniency. So this is Jagmeet Singh. This is why he's not allowed in India, because he supports the Khalistani terrorist movement. Now he will say mealy mouth, I don't, but he will never outright condemn the Khalistani movement, and he does work with their propaganda. So this is Jagmeet Singh. That's important to know when we talk about the NDP. All right, so that brings us to the end of the NDP's policies. Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how do I rate the NDP's policies? Out of 10, they are a Venezuela. Venezuela out of 10. Everything that made Venezuela the current hellhole it is in the NDP platform. So if you want to see what the NDP government would look like, move to Venezuela. That is the NDP. Which means the slogan for the NDP is really everything for free. Woohoo! All right, so what are their pathway towards victory? Minority government. The pathway towards victory is just being part of minority government. And what are their chances of winning or improving? They are... Oh, Jagmeet. Okay. That concludes the NDP.